Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Rebel Talk podcast. I'm your host, Zach Moreth, and as always, I'm here with Daylan Flowers. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Ole Miss playing Duke in the Gator Bowl that was recently announced earlier this afternoon here. We are recording on Sunday night. It was the day of the selection show, so we're going to dive into a little bit of the college football playoffs, offering our thoughts and what we believe needs to change in order to better the process going into next year. But here we are, Dalen. Ole Miss, like I just mentioned, will be playing in Jacksonville, Florida, I believe on January 2nd against the Duke Blue Devils team that finished seventh in the ACC. I just wanted to get your thoughts and, your initial reaction to finding out the news.
Well, hi guys. I know I haven't been here for a couple days. Just been a busy couple weeks and with finals getting ready. But it's a bittersweet feeling. Obviously, before the season starts, this is not the moment that Ole Miss fans are thinking that we're in, going 9-3. Getting into so many arguments with fans from other schools of who should get in, who should not get in, and blase blase. But I got the news at the women's basketball game that it would be Duke in the Gator Bowl, and if I'm honest, and I'm gonna keep it honest at all times, it's not something that I'm up most happy about. Just I think the location, the team, just in general, I think it just is. I'm in a sour feeling because I'm upset that we've put ourselves in this position to even be playing in a Gator Bowl this year. And then as well the committee, but we will get into that later on. But a Duke football team that like you said, went 9-3 this year in the ACC. Looking at their schedule, I mean, haven't really beat too many, high top tier teams, but you beat who's in front of you. They went 9-3. Manny Diaz in his year at Duke is, I mean, isn't they? I'm pretty sure Duke's standards are better than what they expected coming out. Mike Elko leaving and Manny Diaz being there for his first year. For people that may not know a little bit about this Duke team, Malik Murphy is their quarterback. If that name might sound familiar to some people, he was at Texas last year. Obviously behind Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning as well. I'm sure some people that are just kind of true nerds of the game watched a little bit of what he got to do at Texas and the few reps that he was able to play. Transfer to Duke this year has looked honestly really good. I mean, it's a dual threat guy. Will put the ball in his hands and tuck it and run a lot. Has a decent arm, is really good. He can kind of get outside the pocket and using his arm and making good deep ball throws. So we'll see for our defense who will, more than likely opt out for the bowl game. And so, expect Malik Murphy to just kind of correlate and try to depict our passing defense, of course, depending on who opts out for us. So I honestly think it will be a fun game, in general. I one point that I kind of want to bring up is just kind of, I don't know who's going to opt out in general. I think kind of the guys that I feel like everyone's talking about: Walter Nolan, Princely Umami Yellen, maybe Trey Amos, especially on that defensive side, and I'm sure a few guys on the offensive side as well, like Trey Harris has already announced he'll be entering his name in the draft and etc. But I still think a good majority of the team will more than likely play, and I mean, although this situation sucks for Ole Miss fans, I still think that if you can be there on January 2nd in Jacksonville, Florida, it's going to be a late game, and I'm sure that the guys that will be playing would definitely appreciate your support and appreciate your love as they have their finals send out in an Ole Miss jersey. So we'll continue to look forward to that game, and I'm sure we will continue to bring more content talking about the Duke and Ole Miss matchup as the time gets closer to January 2nd. But right now, man, it's a bittersweet and a feeling because just kind of irritation. This is a team that I watched, beat and dominate the SEC champions, and now we're playing against the Duke Blue Devils in a bowl game, and that by any means, when I say that, it's no disrespect to Duke, but just the normal comparison to what this football team has been this year compared to Duke football, when I hope for this game to go is we dominate on every aspect, no matter who opts out for us. So we'll look forward to it and hope to get that 10th win of the season and, kind of solidifying another double-digit win season for Ole Miss. But it's still a sour feeling regardless of the fact that this team should be playing in the 12-team playoff currently.
Yeah, it's disappointing, Dalen. And, we've talked about it on all these shows, all these losses that you've given up throughout the year. It's a shame, but here we are. They're playing in the Gator Bowl, which it just sounds even crazy to say. I mean, you go back
Yeah.
you go back a year and it's like, okay, we're playing in the Peach Bowl. We just got Walter Nolan, Prince Umami Ellen. All these pieces are falling into play. So things change, and that's college football. And I think that's what the fans have to realize. And on the other side of that conversation is you look at what Arizona State and Indiana have done, projected arguably being the worst teams in their conference, and they're both going to the college football playoffs. So
Yeah.
again, it's time to focus on acquiring a lot of talent through the transfer portal and ultimately building this team around a very solid core,
Hmm.
a lot of young guys on the defensive front, and of course Austin Simmons at quarterback. But yeah, just looking at Duke here, 9-3 losses to Georgia Tech, SMU, and Miami. They lost to very competitive teams. They overperformed 100% after losing
Yeah.
Elko. I was shocked that they went 9-3. But still, you'd love to see Ole Miss maybe playing in Las Vegas against USC. I
Yeah.
saw a lot of hype or a lot of projections having Ole Miss playing Illinois, Iowa, or potentially TCU. So I was
Hmm.
a little surprised by the news, but it is what it is, right? Fans can be upset. We can disagree, as majority of us do, but it's a meaningless bowl game at the end of the day. It is an opportunity to get that 10th win. So I say meaningless. I want everyone to take that with a grain of salt. But the fact of the matter is, this team had college football playoff and maybe national champion expectations. Now we're sitting here in December talking about a game in Jacksonville, which doesn't mean much for the program. But yeah, I do expect guys like Jackson Dart, Caden Priestcorn, maybe Jared Ivey, JJ McGee, some of those true leaders who have been at
Yeah.
Ole Miss for 2 to 3 years to play in this game. And I know fans can argue that they want to see Austin Simmons, but Austin's going to be playing with a group of players that isn't even on campus yet because of
Hmm.
the transfer portal and all the new freshmen coming in. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you can want to see Simmons, and I agree with that. I want to see Austin go ball out, but the team is not even going to be comparable when you look at the names on the roster now and on the names on the roster in August.
And I and
For
let
next
me add a point to you real
yeah,
quick as well. Just talking about Austin and I myself, I'm obviously excited for what the future holds, and people kind of depict this about baseball, but you kind of will talk about this. I don't know if it's even necessary to risk him playing in this game
yeah,
because of, and I'm sorry, even this is before I even got to Ole Miss, but I watched that Sugar Bowl against Baylor, and I watched Matt Corral play in that game, and a game that we should have won. And Luke Altmaier came into that game after Matt Corral went out with an injury and played his heart out, but Baylor ended up beating Ole Miss. But you don't want to take that chance of anything happening to your future for the next year or two, and then not having the quarterback that you plan on having in the fall because of a Gator Bowl against the Duke Blue Devils. So take that
yeah.
with a grain of salt.
No, it's a great point, Dalen. And going into guys that are playing, Jordan Watkins actually posted a tweet
Yeah.
back when he was on Louisville of him scoring a
Hmm.
touchdown against Duke. So, for example, like that's exactly what we were talking about. Expect the guys like Watkins and the core of this team to come back and play and probably do pretty damn well against Duke. I do expect Ole Miss to go to Jacksonville and pick up that 10th win of the season. But again, South Carolina gets the bid to the Citrus Bowl against Illinois. Alabama gets the bid against Michigan, which looks like a really fun matchup. And Ole
Hmm.
Miss draws Duke, the team who is sandwiched in between South Carolina and Alabama, who are playing two pretty big name Big Ten brands. And Ole Miss draws the Duke Blue Devils, who are known for their elite level of basketball, not football.
Yeah.
No disrespect to those boys, but definitely, an interesting dynamic. I want to talk a little bit about these conference championship games. Before we get into that, do you have anything else on the Gator Bowl, Ole Miss related, before we talk about kind of the process of the college football playoffs and how unorganized, from my opinion, it's been for the entire year day?
Not really, man. I still think that Deion Sanders has made a great point. Either last weekend or the weekend before, just about how none of their NFL bound players will not play in their bowl game. And so for me, I know this is not really the same situation as Colorado, but it's still gonna be really just, I guess, kind of, I don't know the word to describe it, but it's gonna be, I guess, pretty cool just for me to see a lot of these guys that I know will be
Yeah,
playing on Sundays to be playing in this bowl game, because in this time of football and college football, we don't see that normally, especially just considering the scenario that Ole Miss is in. So I'm really just thankful for this group of players, because
100%.
not only have they played their hearts out on the field, but they've been outstanding citizens outside of the football field. So I'm grateful that I was able to watch these young men over the past couple of years play the game that they love.
Yeah, and we'll get you guys some content, kind of evaluating the season
Mm-hmm.
as we go through these weeks where there really won't be a lot of football being played. But again, like we said, talking about these conference championships, really just a couple unique matchups. The Clemson SMU thing was insane. For those who didn't watch, Clemson basically the kicker nailed the career high 56-yarder at
Yep.
the last second to give them the win and that automatic bid into the college football playoffs after Clemson lost to South Carolina last week,
Yep.
lost to Georgia, and they've looked suspect for the entire year. I think they lost to Louisville as well. But it's in the era of college football playoffs where, they take these 5 conference championship winners and give them automatic bid. And that's a problem to me, Dalen, because I'm not taking a shot at the Boise State or Arizona State fan base. I think what those teams have done is incredible. I mean, it's very, very impressive what they've done. Just being Boise State and Arizona State, those aren't 2 teams who you'd expect to be the 3 and 4 seeds in the college football playoffs, but here we are. And to me, I don't know if you can look at me with a straight face and say that on a neutral site, Boise State and Arizona State would beat South Carolina or Ole Miss or Alabama. It doesn't make sense to me. So I do think there needs to be kind of a revamp in evaluating these teams for next year. And Nick Saban talked about it. There also has to be a stronger consideration in who these teams are playing, because the SEC has much more difficult schedules than a lot of the Big Ten schools. You look at the teams that Oregon and Ohio State and Indiana have played, really, and Penn State even, not a whole lot of competitive teams on their schedule who you have to get up for on a weekly basis in comparison to the SEC. And now you see Ole Miss next year, they're playing Tulane and Washington State in the non-con. And compared to this year, we think that's a great thing because it's going to prepare the team for conference play. But God forbid you lose one of those games, it's ultimately meaningless because a lot of these other teams in the college football playoff contention are spending those weeks playing absolutely nobodies, kind of like how Ole Miss did this year. So it's really complicated, Dalen. I don't see this being the model of college football for the future. I actually see it expanding to 16 teams in the next 2 or 3 years here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get your take and just how this whole situation unfolded this morning.
It's kind of a weird situation like you talked about. And I will give props to SMU. I've watched them a lot. People don't know I actually live in about 45 minutes north of Dallas. So I've watched SMU a lot this year. And what Rhett Lashley has done their first year in the ACC is incredible. And I'm honestly still pretty happy that they came back and, almost won that game. And I will kind of add a point for that game as well. Special teams is just as important as offense and defense, because if their special team stops Clemson from, not getting up the field as far, and then they have their completion, then, that may be a different game, or they should have went for 2 and they got a touchdown. Another different story though. But Rhett Lashley had said to some people on throughout the media, I can't remember who, before the conference championship game, that basically if my entire team had COVID before this game Saturday and no one could play, we would get in automatically because we wouldn't have the hypothetical we would lose this game and we wouldn't get in. They still got in. I truly believe that's just because they came back and made it a competitive game. But it's a sour feeling because we could say this about a lot of teams. I hate to bring up this point and be this guy, but Texas has played Georgia twice, lost twice. And when you look at the other teams Texas has played, again, no disrespect, I think Texas is still one of the best teams in the country. But when you look at the other teams that Texas has played, I mean, they're not comparable to not comparable to the other teams that teams around them are playing. I mean, we didn't play Georgia twice, but we still played them at home just like Texas did, and we dominated the SEC champions. Texas had 2 opportunities at Austin and at the SEC championship game and failed on both occasions. I was more, I said this to you a couple weeks ago, right after the Florida game, we did our live stream. I was more irritated the fact that Alabama was right in front of Ole Miss in the rankings compared to some of these other teams. And it's just irritating when we go back and forth with these things because number one, we put ourselves in this position, but number two is the conference championship should not be in the situation of if you lose, this is the consequence. But you bring up a good point, and again, I hate saying stuff like this, but I don't know why. But I told you a few weeks ago that I had a feeling that the committee was going to do the politically correct thing this year. Don't know why I said that. I don't know why I had that gut feeling, but I did. And I don't know why. And I say that because they have not done the politically correct thing since the playoffs were invented. You look back at last year, I know Florida State's quarterback goes down the conference championship game. They went undefeated and they should have been in the fourth spot and they were put over by Alabama. That's not the politically correct thing to do. You look at years ago, and I brought this point up to you as well. Ohio State and USC in 2017 win their conference championship game. Ohio State has 2 losses. USC has 2 losses. Alabama has 1 loss. And, that Auburn team goes to the ACC championship game. But Bama gets put in over Ohio State and USC. They end up winning the national championship that year. But that's still not the politically correct thing to do.
Yeah.
This year, I look at teams like Indiana. I look at teams like I know Clemson ends up winning the ACC championship game, but you could say Clemson or SMU. I said Indiana. You could look at teams like Texas, who I brought up earlier, even Notre Dame, who I know only has 1 loss. But there are teams that, I'm surprised that this year was the year that the committee said, we're technically going to do the politically correct thing. And I look at SMU, I look at Indiana. Indiana's 11-1. Politically correct that you put an 11-1 team over a 9-3 team. That's politically correct. But when you look with the eye test and you look and you break it down, I won't. I will never be able to understand it, Zach. I won't. I just won't. And again, this is no disrespect to Indiana. They have had a fantastic year.
Yeah.
They've transformed the Big Ten and have now made a name for themselves. And I think that they will now be able to recruit at a high level on both the high school and transfer portal. But when I watch their defenses, I don't see that this defense from Indiana can match up like the Ole Miss defense can compared to teams that they're going to play in the playoff. I really don't think Indiana's going to be able to match up with Notre Dame. I really don't think that the number 1 team in the country, the Oregon Ducks, has the hardest path in the playoff is fair compared to the 5th-ranked Texas Longhorns. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But going back to your point, the conference championship thing is weird because we could have not lost to Florida, say, been okay and won out the last 2 games. We still would have been in, but we wouldn't even been in the conference championship game. And so the entire situation, you can kind of put a little asterisk next to it and say, okay, how do we as an entire country, but as well, how do the conferences go about what to make this better for each team that has the opportunity to either play in the conference championship game or is right on that outskirts of making the playoff? Because Greg Sankey was obviously not happy with what Kirby Smart said after the post game, but I think he had a point. And even though that they probably, if I'm mistaken, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they make the schedules themselves in terms of where they play and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know how much things are taken into accountability of where teams are playing. And I say that, and then I'll give it back to you. When Bama was ranked in front of us last week, I truly thought it was because they went to LSU, we went to LSU, we lost, but they blew out LSU. And we beat Oklahoma. They lost Oklahoma, but it was on the road, and we beat them at home, which makes no sense, might I add. But I'm trying to think of every possibility in my head of what the committee could be thinking, and these are just things that are coming into my head. So, as much as I love college football, Zach, it's broken right now, and it's we got the 12-team playoff, hopefully, in essence of removing a lot of the situational awareness that was happening, and well, it seems we're in a bigger mess than we were last year. So, we'll see how this playoff unfolds, and we'll see the way it unfolds, how the committee looks, because I'm not expecting Indiana to put up a fight. I'm not expecting a few other teams to put up a fight, especially in the first round. And even if they get past the first round, then move on to that second round, they're going to get demolished. And, again, I don't know that this is football. Anything can happen. But just looking at it from an eye test and watching some other teams compete against other teams, I don't see how competitive, especially this first round of the playoffs, will actually be. When it could be a lot more competitive if teams like Ole Miss, even South Carolina, may have had a better opportunity to get in if things were looked at a little differently.
Yeah, oh my gosh, man. It's just you beat Florida and the path is right there. It's so easy. It's going to be a season remembered forever for Ole Miss fans in terms of getting into the playoffs and ultimately failing to do so, which it's disappointing, but I said it earlier, teams in today's college football realm are able to regroup after 1 year and put themselves
Yeah.
back on the map going into whatever that next season may be. Like Kurt Signetti is at Indiana right now, and they're the 10 seed in this college football playoffs. I know their
Hmm.
schedule is not comparable to an SEC schedule like Ole Miss had, but you just look around the country and see what happens. You talked about it briefly, Dalen. The whole Oregon and left side of the bracket here, this is so unbelievably bad for the college football playoffs. For those who aren't looking at this picture like I am, Tennessee plays at Ohio State in the first round, which should not be one of the first round matchups, in my opinion. That's probably a really good first round matchup that should come in the second round. And the winner of that game plays Oregon. In my opinion, those are, I want to say, three of the most talented teams out of every single team in the college football playoffs. The
Yep.
only teams with more talent, I would think, maybe Texas and Georgia, but three out of those five are going to face each other in the first and second round. And then
It's just not compelling. It's not. I'm sorry. It's
and
not SMU, Penn State. It's not compelling. Clemson and Texas. It's not compelling. It's just not. And I hate to interrupt you, but it's not compelling for not even just to be on the Ole Miss perspective, but I feel like it's a neutral of a
yeah,
team that if I could be if I'm a UCLA fan and I want to watch the playoffs, it's not compelling at all.
no, and I am watching this as a complete neutral fan. What's happening to Oregon is unbelievable. They have the hardest path to win the national championship, and they are undefeated, did not lose a game, and won their conference championship. That can't happen in the future. And then on the other side, right now, I think Georgia is going to wipe the floor with
Yep.
that opposite side of the bracket here. They're going to face either Notre Dame or Indiana while getting another rest week for winning their conference championship. And then they're going to get either Boise State, SMU, or Penn State. So right now, I'm predicting Georgia to go to the national championship um, with ease. And I don't enjoy saying that, but here's the problem with including the G5 team of Boise State, SMU, who's great. We talked about it. They've played a great year, but I don't believe the ACC should have two teams here, including a very suspect Clemson team that we mentioned earlier. And then Indiana, Notre Dame, they've both had their ups and downs throughout the season with bad losses, but you face Georgia, a team that's going to be fully rested, and a Kirby Smart that's pretty fired up for a team that hasn't played to their full potential all year long. It doesn't even seem like it's going to be a close game to me. Now, I hope I'm proven wrong. Like we're sitting here a
Yeah.
little less than 2 weeks out. If these games turn out to be, what we saw from Michigan and TCU a few years ago,
Hmm.
like that is awesome. That's great for the sport. But just based off the eye test, you see Arizona State coming in at 4 spot and Boise State at the 3. It doesn't seem right. And then even further, like the winner of Tennessee versus Ohio State playing Oregon in the second round, it seems even like more wrong than you could ever imagine. Like if I were to show Dylan, if I were to show you this before the season started, I think you'd be like, what the hell happened? Like, what are you talking about? And then just the Ole Miss perspective that makes it even worse is the fact that you did beat Georgia by 3 scores. And if you were watching that conference championship game, there was no doubt in my mind if the Ole Miss that played Georgia played Texas in the conference championship game, I think they would win again by 3+ scores. So
Yep.
it's frustrating. We can't do anything about it, which is the worst part. It's over. You got Duke here coming up on January 2nd, but it goes to show that, chaos is everywhere in college football right now. So if you can structure together a very solid coaching staff, which I believe Ole Miss has, a pretty decent NIL fund, which I also believe Ole Miss has, you can compete in any given year. And I hope the fans can understand that and realize that, yeah, we're losing a lot of talent to the NFL, but there's no reason that Ole Miss isn't in this exact conversation next year or potentially have a spot earned for themselves. So that's kind of where I'm at with this whole thing, Dalen. I would like to see some changes next year. I don't think the conference championship winner should get a bid the second they win their conference, because I think Alabama, I'll even throw Miami in there, Ole Miss and South Carolina would win Boise State's conference. I think they would win um, the Big 12 as well. And you have those two winners sitting at the 3 and 4. It's not right. It doesn't feel right, but I hope I'm proven wrong. At the end of the day, this is the slate. And if these games are fantastic, I'll stop talking. I'll bite my tongue. But based off the eye test and the news we received today, really just an interesting bracket that I would not have predicted in a million years, Dalen.
Yeah. I don't even know where to like go any forward.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say this is me. I'm not upset with the conference championships getting bids. I think that a different path may be needed to take a look at it. And when I say that is even Georgia, it's irritating, man. Like Georgia's not better than us, and we beat them 28-10. And I watched this game yesterday, and I've watched this Georgia team. Other than the Clemson game, the first game of the season, I watched them against Georgia Tech. They shouldn't have won that game. If Georgia Tech takes a risk and goes for two instead of kicking the field goal to send it to overtime, this may be a completely different ball game. I watched Georgia struggle against Florida, a game right before they played Ole Miss. That whether you're looking at it now that we're happy, Ole Miss fans are happy that Georgia won that game. I've watched this Georgia team struggle all year, and it's just irritating that Ole Miss has done this to themselves. But as well, I don't know, man. It's just I'm irritated with a lot of things, but I'm also irritated with the way that Ole Miss has played, especially offensively, the entire season. Because looking, you talked about, you told me before the season started, this would be the bracket. If you told me before the season started that our offense was the reason that we have 3 losses, when this is a lane keeping football team, I'd tell you you're an idiot. So sitting here and reflecting on everything, it's, I know, and it's at the end of the day, I love sports and this is my career, but I'm not gonna let it truly just affect my life and my
Yeah.
mood on a 24 basis. But it sucks, and I probably think back on this when I have kids, and I tell them, this was the year I was a junior in college, and we were supposed to go to the playoffs, and we went 9-3. So it's irritating, and we'll see. Like you said, as a college football lover, regardless of what I've said, that I don't think these games are compelling just looking at the teams. Like you said, I just hope that they are, because I want to see good games.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Georgia have a cakewalk. I want to see Georgia be tested. I want to see Georgia, and some people will look at me and say we should be rooting for the SEC. No, I want the best teams competing at the highest level. I'm not the SEC bias type of guy. Maybe I should be, maybe I shouldn't. This is me. So I just hope it's compelling. I'm gonna watch every game, and I'm gonna depict things myself, and we'll move forward from there. And then Ole Miss will be hopefully getting ready for the Gator Bowl against the Duke Blue Veils, man.
Yeah, Dalen. And I just to reiterate it once more, like, we want these games. I want to watch a good game.
Yeah.
I think there are some flaws based on, just this graphic that I'm looking at for the college football playoffs, which will start not next Saturday, but the one following that. I believe the Heisman Trophy winner will be announced actually next Saturday when none of those games are going on. So that'll be interesting. But, even more Ole Miss related, the transfer portal officially opens tomorrow. The rebelwalk.com has all your coverage you need for that, including a transfer portal tracker. You can check out who's transferred from Ole Miss, who's transferring into Ole Miss, and there's a lot of big names out there. So be sure to stay tuned to our website for more. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Dalen, anything else, brother?
No, man, y'all stay warm. And if we have any college students watching, I wish the best of luck to my friend Zach, myself, and all of you guys on your finals. Because it's been a lot of preparation, but I hope everything
Yeah.
goes for everyone. So best of luck, y'all.
We're almost there, man. One more week. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Hotty toddy go, Raz. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.
Howdy toddy.